Right, let's get on with this. So, I'm talking about what happens at Origin, the human aspect of coffee, and what's important to farmers. And this is something that became quite important to me at this event. So this was Tampa Tantrum in San Francisco, where we did a debate where we talked about using images of coffee producers and their communities in our marketing is exploitation. And I presented the argument against this. I feel it's a good thing. I feel it's a good thing because I wrote a book and it's got loads of pictures in it. I'd get into so much trouble if it was a bad thing. But I really wanted to talk about what I feel is important to coffee farmers. But before I do that, I have to tell you who I am because I'm sure you have no idea. My name is Stefan Leighton. That is not a spelling mistake. In Sweden, all of my bank documents actually have Stefan on them instead of Stephen, and they won't change it. I am hoppy, I am boozy, and I'm definitely ginger. I'm asking who I am because I've slept for 4 hours in the past 2 days, as I roasted the coffee for the World Barista Champion this year, which was pretty awesome. Which meant I went partying. Even though I'd been really good on this tour that I've been doing of not drinking, I may have broke that rule on Sunday night, as I was goddamn surprised. Who am I? As we said at the start, I am the owner of Has Been Coffee and founder. I'm a partner in Drop Coffee in Sweden with Joanna Alm, and I am also part owner of 3FE Coffee in Ireland with Mr. Harmon. And to really tell you who I am, we need to go back a little bit. You've got to love that haircut, haven't you? So I was a weird kid. So here, I wanted to be a goalkeeper. Like, who wants to be a goalkeeper in football? That's where the crazy people go who can't play football. I was also a very good Cub Scout. I was a very good boy. And I had an amazing haircut, as you can tell. I'm very proud of that haircut. I wish I could grow it now. Unfortunately, it's not possible. But I was a very weird 7-year-old, because at 7 years old, I wanted one thing more than anything else. I wanted to go to prison. Now, I know that's a little bit strange, but this program, Porridge, has anybody seen Porridge? Has it been a thing in Australia? It's like a BBC comedy from the 70s. Good. I'm glad you've got some context for it. So this is Mr. Barraclough. Mr. Barraclough, for those who don't know, was basically bullied by all of the inmates. He was bullied by all of the officers, but he was a good man. Like, you could see this quality in him that came through, that he really cared about people and he really liked the people that he was with. And I wanted to be this guy. At 7 years old, I wanted to go to a prison and work there. I didn't know anybody who worked in a prison. I'd never been to prison at that point. And I didn't know anybody who had, but I was very keen to do that. And as a 7-year-old, I grew up in a single-parent family on a council estate in a place called Cannock, which, think of the worst place in Sydney and then times it by 20. My mum was on benefits. We never went without what we needed, but quite often we went without what I wanted. On a Sunday night, we used to sit by the fire and tell ghost stories to each other. And I thought this was just something everybody did on a Sunday night, until I found out we hadn't got any 50 pences for the meter, for the electricity. So we had to sit there in the dark. Luckily, when I hit 8, I learned how to break into the TV that we put 50p's in to steal them to put them in the electricity. But that was pretty much life. But my mom was and is awesome. She's the most amazing, I can't make it work, you can see her. She's the most amazing lady, she really is. And she let me do whatever I wanted. And once a month, we used to go to this place here, which was called Silver Blades, which was an ice rink in Wolverhampton. The Wolverhampton thing's important because in Wolverhampton, we had this place. Now, this place was called WTM Snapes. I can read. And it was full of oldie worldy coffee things. Think of all the cliches in coffee. This place had it. Brown paper, it had a roaster in the cellar, all the smoke used to come out onto the street. And I was obsessed with this place. Smoke? Fire? Wow, this is great. So my mum used to let me go in and choose the coffee we were going to have for that month. Even though we didn't have a lot of money, she would let me go and choose the coffee. I found out fairly soon after she actually doesn't like coffee and she still hates coffee. But this place was amazing. Nobody knows when it opened, but when they closed it down and they were selling off all the things in there, they found a pot that had a United States flag on it with 20 stars on the flag. That dates it between 1880 and 1820. So he was there for a very long time. An old man Snape, that wasn't his name because he would have been about 200 years old, but old man Snape I used to follow around and he would encourage me to ask questions. Every time I went, he would take time to tell me all about coffee. So it led to me, for Christmas, I wanted something. Now, this gives away my age because I was 7 years old in 1980. Do the math, I'm 21. And this was the toy of the year. Everybody wanted a Rubik's Cube. But what did this idiot want? Well, this idiot wanted a filter coffee maker. And luckily, Santa loves all kids, even the ginger ones. And for Christmas, I got my filter coffee maker, and I enjoyed coffee. This is my secondary school I went to. And I was trying to find out a little fact so you could get some context of Blake Valley Technical College. And the only thing I could find out from it, that 16% of people left with a qualification. I was in the 84%. And it was one of the top 5 worst performing schools in the UK and was definitely the worst performing school in Staffordshire. So I didn't have much of a good start with this place. In fact, it was quite bad. And I didn't enjoy school. I was a very bad student. I was the class clown, which was told to me on a parents' evening. On the parents' evening, me and my mum were sitting there because she was my parent, and Mrs. Leighton, Stephen, he's got so much potential. That just means he's thick. He's got so much potential, but he just doesn't apply himself. He likes to act up. He likes to show off. He's always the class clown, and there's no place in society for a class clown. I said, Miss, what about the circus? To which my mum burst out laughing, couldn't stop laughing, and yeah, this is Mum now. She's still daft, and she's still awesome, and she still encourages me to do things that I really shouldn't. The whole book was my mum encouraging me to do that. She was like, you tell all these stories about these producers, but you should write it down. I'm borderline illiterate, but she encouraged me to do all the things that I shouldn't do. And she encouraged me to keep dreaming about the prison service. So when I left school, we set fire to it. It would have been the best thing for it. And when you're a kid, you can't go to jail. You can't get into the prison service. You need some life experience. You need to learn things. And I studied about what would be helpful to help me get that experience and learn what to do in coffee. And I read an article. This isn't the article, but it was a similar kind of article where it was talking about people killing themselves in prison. Suicide was a massive issue, absolutely huge problem. So I thought if I go into mental health, then that would be a good background to help me understand the problems that I might be able to deal with when I'm in the prison service, because I was going to be a prison officer. So I went to this place. This is how I found it. This is how I left it. This is St George's Hospital in Stafford, and Stafford is where Has Been is now. And I worked there for 7 years, just at a time that it was closing down. It was an old school asylum. So a lot of the healthcare of mental health in the UK was pushed into the community, was pushed to private entities and not the health service. And it was in that transition time, but I started off working with elderly mentally ill, so people with dementia, people with Alzheimer's disease. Then ended up going on to older people with anxiety and depression issues. I then went to work with younger people, so working with anxiety and depression, and ended up in a secure unit where people who committed crimes but had mental health issues got sent to. And I loved it. It gave me the best of both worlds. It taught me so much. It taught me how to deal with people, particularly this man. I am digging out Colin today. Can everybody just tell him I'm digging him out as well? I have to point out on this photo, this is Colin's private collection here of instant coffees. That's what he drinks at home. But he taught me a lot, and he taught me a lot of how to go to jail, how to go to prison. So come to 1997, I applied for a job at HMP The Mount, which was a prison just north of London. And this is me in my number ones. This is me passing out. And when you pass out, it's really military-style prison officer training. They teach you to march. I learned how to march. It's very good. You do kind of left wheel means turn left, and right wheel is turn right, and halt, and then you stand there, and the governor comes along, and he's like, officer such and such, you're going to do really, really well. I'm going to be a credit to the prison service. Officer such and such, you've done amazing. You're a changed person since you've come to this college. Well done. Officer Leighton, you make the smartest uniform in the world look like a bag of shit. And that was my passing out advice from my governor. But I went to HMP The Mount, and I was there for around about 12 months, and then there was a problem. There was a problem at this place. So this place was the worst youth prison in the country. So they found out about my mental health training. And there was an increase in suicides that year. I'll just take you to this one. You can't see it so good, but this spike here was as I joined the prison service. I don't know whether to take that personally or not, but we had a huge jump in deaths. There's 120 prisons in the English and Welsh prison system, and 10 of them happened at this place. So 70 deaths, 10 of them in one prison. So they dropped me in, and they said, Steve, fix it. I did fix it a little bit. We stopped young people hurting themselves. It meant me doing a lot of night shifts. I spent a lot of time between the hours of like 10 and 2 in the morning, talking to young people through big metal doors, trying to stop them hurting themselves, trying to give them support, trying to help them. And I loved that part of my job. But I hated the prison service. Like, locking somebody up behind a big metal door is the weirdest feeling I've ever experienced. I didn't have the right to do that. I didn't have the power to take somebody else's liberty away. It just felt weird. But come 3 o'clock, they were all asleep. And you'd go and check them and everything would be okay. So I'd go to the centre, which was where the office was, and had a little baby belling cooker and a frying pan, and I'd get some green beans that I bought from Sweet Maria's in the US, and I put it in this frying pan and roasted the tastiest coffee you've ever drunk. That's how I did Dale's coffee for WBC. Until one night, this happened. I managed to set off the fire alarms. 700 young people being woken up at 3 o'clock in the morning by fire alarms. They let you know they're unhappy. Excuse me, sir, I wish you wouldn't do that. Could you please stop that noise? It's disturbing my sleep. And such things. I got called up to the governor's office and he was like, Mr. Leighton, what have you been doing? I was like, I was roasting coffee, sir. He was like, oh, get out of my office. And that was the beginning of the end. I had to get out of the prison service. So I sat there on one night and decided that I was going to be a coffee roaster. I bought a 2-kilo roaster. I put it in the back of my garage at home. This is 2003. Set fire to my garage roof many times. Who knew you couldn't have a chimney made out of flexible hose that you use for a dishwasher? I didn't know it was going to melt, did I? And Has-Been was created. And I'm not going to go into all of the Has-Been stuff because I really have talked about myself enough. And we're here to talk about what happens at Origin, the human aspect of coffee, and what's important to farmers. So what happens at Origin? Relationships. And whenever I'm struck with a word that I have to try and understand, I go online and I use the Google machine to tell me what it means. And I really like the first one. It's the way in which two or more people or things are connected, or the state of being connected. I don't like the second one so much, the state of being connected by blood or marriage. But I quite like the last one as well, the way in which two or more people or groups regard or behave towards each other. Now, if we go back to relationships back in the day, when coffee was a commodity and we didn't have this specialty community, this was pretty much the relationship. This looks a bit like Roland, my roaster who works for me at Has-Been. He actually dresses like that still. But colonial countries would turn up to coffee producers and they'd go, Juan Valdez, grow me coffee. And Juan Valdez would grow his coffee and he would give it to Mr. Colonial Man, who would exploit him and take all of his money. But I see relationships in coffee a little different. This is my relationships in coffee. So this is me with Beto and Beto. It's really easy to remember the names. And this is in Guatemala. And this is in Bolivia. This is Tadasio Mamani. which is here, and his two sons, another Beto, and I don't know his other son because he works with Tadasio, but Beto also has a coffee farm. And when I was in Bolivia last time, instead of kind of like, we sat round cupping and like being really awkward, and I said, should we go and have a game of football? So we actually had the female coffee producers against the male coffee producers, and they kicked our ass. But this is how I feel a relationship should be. But it kind of got me thinking of what kind of relationships that we have at Origin. And the ways that we buy coffee are quite different. So I thought, importers. Importers is one way that we buy green coffee. We have somebody in our countries that goes out to Origin and fosters relationship and builds them. And I like to think of importers as the evil coffee people. Because they're middlemen. They're taking money away from coffee producers. You know, they're terrible people who are exploiting, they're the colonial people exploiting these producers. And then we've got exporters. Now, exporters for me are the Batman of the coffee industry, because they're kind of good, because they're connecting coffee producers with coffee roasters, but they're kind of bad, because they're still middlemen. You don't like the middlemen. I can see you sneaking out, by the way. Everybody turn around and look at them walking out. Boo! And then, of course, direct trade. Oh, it's definitely the only way to heaven. Like, it's the only positive way that you can buy coffee is by buying direct trade. It's okay if you pay $1 a pound as long as you pay it directly. Direct trade is definitely the only way to heaven. So I came up with this idea. I might even market it because I think it's such a catchy name. Steve's Good or Bad Coffee Relationship Quiz. Asterix, there are no bad coffee people in this quiz. So we even have our own theme music for it. No, we'll move on from that. So, I want to introduce you to here one of my, well, I call him a friend, he calls me a stalker, but this is Gabriel Carvalho Dias. He owns a farm in Brazil called Brazil Fazenda Cachoeira da Grama. I love this coffee. It was the first coffee in 2003 when I set up my roastery that I got. They told me I was going to taste milk chocolate and hazelnuts, and I tasted milk chocolate and hazelnuts. It was delicious. I've sold more bags of this coffee to people at home than I have any fancy geisha that you can possibly think of, because it's accessible, because it's delicious, and it tastes of coffee. And I really like coffee. In fact, so much so I used this coffee in the Brewers' Cup this year in the UK against all of the geishas, and bombed out. But I love this coffee so much. Gabriel sells to an importer in the UK. That's how I found him. That's how our relationship was fostered. And he still sells to that same importer today. So 14 years on, he has a strong relationship with that importer. We have a European exclusive on it. So we buy all of it for Europe. And I would buy more of it if I could. I know exactly how much Gabriel gets paid. I know exactly how much the importer takes out for himself. And I'm really happy with it. It's actually good money. Brazil's a big country. I have to spend a long time travelling around Brazil to go and find that coffee and to maintain that relationship. So, is this a good or a bad relationship? If we think it's good, oh, dudes, come on. I really haven't sold it well. Do I have to tell him some more? Is it a good relationship? Thank you. It is. It's a fantastic relationship. I love working with Gabriel. He loves working with the importer because the importer buys more coffee from him than I can. And in Brazil, that's really important. When you've got containers and containers of coffee to sell, somebody buying 1.5 isn't enough. You know, when you've got 4 to sell, you need to find a home for the rest, and the importer does that around the rest of the world. But for every yin, there's a yang. And this guy is called Camilo Maradals. I've probably murdered his name. You may know him. His coffee was the one that Matt Perger used in 2013 in the WBC. Sasha, who won the WBC a couple of years ago, also used coffee from Camilo. Have I mentioned that I roasted the coffee for the World Barista Champion this year? But Camilo is a bit of a legend in the industry. But in the UK, he was selling to an importer. And all that importer was interested in from his farm was the cheaper coffee. The more commoditised kind of 84, 85 point coffee that was good, but not outstanding. And I wanted to buy some of his micro lots that are like on these smaller plots of land here. And I couldn't. The importer wouldn't sell them. So I get in touch with Camille. I was like, why can't I buy them? Like, are you not selling into Europe with them? And he's like, no, they won't take them. To the point of the relationship eroded so much with the importer that then he no longer works with that importer. Camillo didn't sell the coffee he wanted to sell. I didn't get to buy the coffee that I wanted to buy, and my customers didn't get to drink all of his delicious coffee. So was this a good or a bad relationship? I'm not going to get you to do this because you were rubbish last time. This is a bad relationship. Very, very bad. It wasn't good. We didn't get out of it what we wanted. But we want to talk about good relationships. I've done this presentation a couple of times now, and whenever this photo comes up, I get quite emotional about it because I love this family. Vincente, who is there in the background, he manages the farm every day, and his family help him with his wife. His Rosalina. You have Jennifer, the larger daughter. You have Vincent, easy to remember his name, and Diana, the little girl. Me and Diana, we get on so much. My Spanish is awful, and her English, she really should try harder, but her English is awful. But we just get on. We hang out. But this time when I went to visit, she wasn't there because she was at school. And she was so upset that she heard that we were playing football, and they travelled 14 kilometres from the farm to come down and see me. And the first thing she did when she saw me was ran up to me and gave me the biggest hug. I love this family so much. They're so awesome. They're part of the Sol de Mana project in Bolivia. And the Sol de Mana project is something our exporter has set up to help improve practices in Bolivia. We pay 25 cents a pound more for this coffee, and that goes towards, we flew in an agronomist a couple of years ago. There are no agronomists in Bolivia at all, not one. We encourage them to plant new tissue. We give them plants from the nursery. We give them fertilizers. We give them regular education about husbandry. This project is amazing. The farm has gone from producing around about 10 bags, which next year is going to produce around about 60, 70 bags, hopefully. The upturn in yield and the upturn in quality has been phenomenal. And none of that could have happened without our exporter. They fostered the relationship between us both. And without them, we wouldn't be able to have the communication. I can't pick up the phone to Vincent and say, send us the coffee, mate, because he doesn't know how to export. I don't know how to get coffee out of Bolivia. Trust me, it's a nightmare. The exporter adds a really important and useful part to this relationship. They're symbiotic to the relationship. So again, it's a good relationship. It's a fantastic one. And then we have this one. I'm still bitter about this one. So I'm going to get this out. I'm going to spit it all out. I was part of the 2009 Cup of Excellence in Rwanda. First time ever that a Cup of Excellence happened outside of the Americas. And if you cook Rwandas enough, you will find potato defects. I don't care what Rwanda it is, you will find it. And when you find it in Cup of Excellence, it gets kicked out. This coffee we loved, like the whole jury loved. So much so that when he got kicked out, at the end of the competition, we held an auction between all of the buyers who were there to buy this coffee. It was a 15-bag lot. It wasn't huge, but it was delicious. And because I was showing off, I was like, I can buy this. So I beat Intelligentsia and Mariama Coffee to buy this one. So, yeah, I'm a big deal. Bought the coffee, and I said to the exporter, you need to have it ready by October. My container is leaving in October. You need to have the coffee ready. Email in September. Are we all good for October? No problem, Steve. October comes. Where's my coffee? No reply. Okay. Container's leaving. No reply. So I think, okay, sold it somewhere else. That's me blown. Okay. January, I get an email from the exporter. Coffee's ready. I'm like, okay, my container's left. How do I get 15, 20 bags out of the country? Well, you know, you did promise the co-op that big money, and they could have sold to Mariama or Intelligentsia. I was like, okay, we'll air freight it out. So I paid to air freight coffee out of Rwanda to England. And I said to him, on one condition, you pallet wrap it and you make sure that it goes on the plane in one piece. No problem, Steve. Get a phone call 3 days later from Brussels Airport. these bags, does it matter if it rains on them? No, actually it's okay because they're really well shrink wrapped, aren't they? Oh no, they're just single bags just thrown in the bottom of the plane. They've been sitting on the runway for about 2 hours being rained on. We'll send them to you. It nearly brought down Has-Been. At the time, I just left the prison service. So I left the prison service Christmas 2008. Yes, I did set up Has-Been in 2003. I did the two for a long time. I'd been on Cup of Excellence juries many times before as that. But it nearly took us down. Like, we nearly lost the business. It was a huge amount of money that I'd risked on buying this coffee and air freighting it out for some soggy coffee. Was this good or bad? Well, it was definitely bad. It was a horrible experience that I'm still very angry about, and we'll move on quickly. So, direct trade. Camillo. Remember Camillo from earlier? Top guy, roast great coffee. I ended up going to him directly, and we ended up buying all of his lovely micro lots, and it was a fantastic time. Camillo was like really getting excited about new things he was doing on the farm. And the second year of buying directly, I was planning to go see him, and I'm in La Paz airport in Bolivia. First time I got internet for a few days, opened up my laptop. Sorry, Steve, won't be there, got to go to Miami. I'm in the airport waiting to go to Colombia. I'm like, okay. Now, my first thought is a lot of people in Central South America, when they're sick, end up going to Miami for medical treatment. That's the first thing that popped into my head. I was just like, wow, is everything okay? Are you good? Like, is there any problems? Unfortunately, he replied with, no, we're just going to Disneyland. See you next year. I'm like, okay. So I ended up in Cali for 2 days with very little to do. Ended up hooking up with another exporter who I now work with regularly. And I was angry. I was bitter about it. Like, if you upset me, like, we're going to be fall out for a long time. So this ended up being what turned into a bad relationship. And it was sad because I loved his coffee, and I actually really liked him as a guy, but we just didn't work together. But I don't want to end on that. I want to end on a positive note. This is my best buddy in the world. He's called Alejandro Martinez. He owns a farm in El Salvador called Finca Argentina, who I've worked with since 2009, I think it is. He's been to mine a lot. He spent 3 weeks in Stafford learning how to roast coffee. I spend a lot of time with him. Again, I'm not bitter about this, but you see here, this is on Boxing Day, around about 3 years ago when I was going through my divorce. Because when you get divorced, you have to have Christmas on your own with a microwave meal and feel sorry for yourself. But Alejandro wouldn't let me do that, so we went to the beach in El Salvador and hung out all over Christmas with him and his family. He's an amazing friend, an amazing guy. Even when I get sunburn, he rubs sun cream in for me. We hang out together. I mean, look at that moustache. Who couldn't love a man like that? And I'm not sure what's going on here, though. He's an amazing guy. He's a really good friend, and he produces stunning coffee. We've just done a book, when we released the book in Ireland, we just did 4 days travelling around Ireland together, promoting the book. He's a legend. He's a top guy. And this is an example of a fantastic relationship. It really is a very strong, good relationship. So whose fault was it? Whose fault was it that those relationships that were good and the relationships that were bad? I want to go back to this guy, because I had a problem. I had a huge problem with this one. I went home, and I found some great coffee in Colombia, and I bought that coffee that year. And in the back of my head, I was like, this guy's a really good guy. Like, what happened? Why did we fall out? Why are we not fixing this? So I found out he was in Seattle during the WBC when Sasha won. He was there, part of Sasha's team. And I was like, I WhatsApp him. I'm just going to send him a message, like, dude, can we meet for a beer? And we met for a beer, and basically what happened was he double booked himself. So his wife had booked this trip to Miami, and they were going to Disneyland, and it was a surprise for the whole family, and he was double booked, and he was going to spend time with his family. Now, if he turned around to me and said, Steve, I'm going on a family holiday, and it's this amazing surprise for the kids, and it's going to be stunning, and we're really looking forward to it, I would have gone, dude, go. Family comes first, second, third, and fourth. Like, apart from, you know who, she doesn't count. But like, we didn't communicate very well. We didn't talk. We didn't work out what was going on. And we've all had relationships where we've fallen out with people. I'm sure we've got friends that we don't talk to anymore. We've got family members, extended family members who we don't talk to because we've had an argument with. And when I was trying to build this talk, I was trying to think, like, what's the magic bullet? What is the thing that people need at Origin? And they need the same things as we need. They're not different. Coffee producers aren't this extraordinary race of people who have different needs and wants. You know, they want to be, they want to be empowered, they want to have success, they want to be told they're doing a good job, they want to be encouraged. You know, they want to be loved, they want to have friends, all the things that we want. And I couldn't tell you anything that was magic. I couldn't tell you anything that was good, apart from talking about myself. Did I tell you I roasted the World Barista Champions coffee? Why did I spend all that time talking about myself at the start? And it is because I have a huge ego. I'm sorry, I have a massive ego, and I need to massage it fairly regularly. But I think it was important to tell you that because, like, the things I learned from Phil Parks, from Snapes, and the things I've learned from my mom, and the things I learned from teachers, even though they were scum, things I learned from patients who were amazing, the things I learned from prisoners, having relationships with my staff, having relationships with my customers, even having a relationship with this guy has meant that I don't have this relationship with my producers, but I have these. I have strong and powerful and important relationships. They're not people I buy from, they're my friends. Like, if you buy my book, please buy my book, because Cosimo will kill me if you don't buy my book. That isn't stories about coffee producers. It's the stories about all of my friends, all of the people I know at Origin. And the reason the photo was in of, where is it going to go back? That one that I skipped past, was something struck me when this conversation was happening. So the people were saying that it was exploiting people at Origin. They were saying, well, you're a white man. You're a white man from the Western world that's privileged, and they can't say no to you. And I get that, I understand that, but I don't ever see it like that. Because my relationships with my guys they're stronger than I am. Like, I can talk to a room full of people like this, no problem. But you put me one-on-one, you may have seen me outside, I get super nervous. I'm like, you dudes are far more important than I could ever be. And I feel exactly the same with all of my producers. So the only magic bullet I have is just be nice. Just care. Just talk to people on an equal footing and an equal level. And just love the people you're working with. Thank you. I'm sorry that I talked about myself a lot. I hope it made sense at the end why. And thank you all for coming today.